Yo, it's Thursday, and you know what that means? It is the chapter 325 leaks of My Hero Academia. And chapter 325 of My Hero Academia, within the editor notes, actually ends with the quote, "The rain hasn't stopped yet." So I'm super interested to go look into this chapter and see kind of what that ominous quote even means. But before we jump in, if you haven't already, please don't forget to drop a subscription if you haven't already, because we are pushing to go plus ultra and get 1,000 subscribers by 2022. Without further ado, let's hop right into chapter 325. Chapter 325, titled Connected by One for All, and the chapter opens with a panel of Koda's sneakers, and as we know from last chapter, Koda's sneakers are the same one as Deku's, and Mineta also tries to run forward towards Deku, but Ida stops him, saying that this is not their turn. Koda calls Deku Midoriya Nichan and apologizes for being paralyzed with fear. He also says that he felt inspired when he saw the giant woman talking about how Deku protected her. He says that everything will now be alright so he can stop crying. And the giant woman cries, saying that many shelters rejected her because of her quirk. She says she was very lucky to find Deku, and she thanks him, and she calls him Mr. Crybaby Hero. Not the best of names that I would want to receive as a hero, but I guess it kind of feeds into the whole Deku being a crybaby. The two of them give Deku a hug. The old man from the first chapter begins to defend Deku, saying that the other civilians are too hysterical, and that obviously Deku doesn't want to stay there just resting forever. He kept fighting because there was a lack of heroes. Now he needs to take a break. He goes on to say that because they are the spectators, the civilians have gotten used to seeing All Might fighting, and have forgotten that the heroes have a heart at the end of the day. He says that after the war, many heroes gave up, so those that are left must have an unwavering determination. He ends his speech by asking, how long are we planning to stay as mere spectators? There's been a lot of discussion within these past few chapters, and we've seen the civilians slowly over time grow to try to become heroes within their own right and defend themselves. And similarly, this question now comes up again, how long are the civilians going to stay as mere spectators before they're involved within the conflict themselves? The civilian who opposed Deku in the last chapter says that some people are calling him All for One's henchman, others the hero's greatest weapon, and he was confused by all of it. He asked Deku if, after resting in UA, will he be able to turn things back to normal, and Deku replies that they will all fight for it. Although I don't like the civilian, I guess his opinion does make sense, and it makes sense why the civilians would have a mixed opinion on Deku, given that they don't really know the status of him. Is he related to All for One? What is the nature of his quirk? And things like that. We then see Ectoplasm go to meet Endeavor, Hawks, and Shoto, who are outside UA, and he asks if they heard Ochako's speech, and he tells them to come in because they will not want to miss what's happening right now. We see Endeavor blaming himself, saying that he just made Deku wander around with no progress, and Hawks corrected him, saying that the progress is right in front of their eyes. He says that One for All is a power formed by the connection between people. Because of it, All Might connected with Midoriya, Midoriya connected with Class 1A, and Uraraka connected the civilians to Midoriya. What comes next is a beautiful double spread of the civilians handing out umbrellas to all the students. Hawks is saying that if from now on each person starts thinking about the whole, a society where heroes have all the time in the world will surely arise. This is a callback to Hawks' initial motivation in wanting a world where heroes have too much time on their hand because there's lack of crime. Shoto then reminds Endeavor that they need to stop Toya together, and Endeavor agrees. Really interesting how it's just like two sentences right there and not too much communication, but I'm sure it'll be a little bit different in the actual chapter. We see Nezu on the phone with Aizawa, and he says that Aizawa's class was able to do what Nezu himself couldn't, and Aizawa asks him to tell Ida that he did a great job. Nezu asks about his leg, and Aizawa says that he hasn't gotten used to it as much as Mirko, and we see a panel of his prosthetic leg. I'm really glad we see Aizawa touched on because we haven't seen him really since the war arc. We then see Kirogiri is kept in the central hospital, and doctors are trying to get him to talk, but according to Aizawa, there has been no progress yet. Nezu says that even if it is small, there is still the spark of hope. This is another plot point that again is brought up. Recently within the anime, it's kind of been revealed the real identity of Kirogiri, and I guess there still is hope, as Nezu says, that Kirogiri can go back to its original self. Aizawa then says the search for Toga continues, and that they have discovered her maximum transformation time. As a countermeasure, they make all refugees go through a period of isolation before they enter UA, to ensure that she will not infiltrate, and Aizawa says that UA is their fortress, and that now is the time for revenge. It's interesting that Horikoshi makes this kind of a quarantine measure for Toga, and I'm wondering how they kind of found out her maximal transformation time, which is pretty interesting. But I guess it makes sense they don't want any more infiltrators within UA. But what's really notable is Aizawa says that now UA is their fortress and it's time for revenge. I guess this implies that UA is now going on the offensive. In the last panel of this chapter shows All Might standing near the UA barrier with a worried face, and the chapter ends here. After this chapter being somewhat so positive, it seems like things are really heading in the right direction. I'm curious as to why All Might would be standing near the UA barrier so worried. I feel like there are death flags coming all over the place, and as the original editor note said, the rain has not yet stopped. So from what that means to me is in these upcoming chapters, it seems like there might be some more heartbreak coming to us as the audience. And to be honest, I feel like death is likely to come within this last final arc. I know there's going to be a ton of tears for us as an audience, especially if All Might dies, but I have been seeing death flags for him since, what, season 3? This chapter is really good, though. It kind of clears up a lot of loose ends, such as like Shoto and Endeavor's search for Toya and whether that's still in progress, Aizawa's status, Kurogiri as a whole, because we haven't seen about him in forever, and along with that we also see the mention of Toga, and it seems like everything's being touched on here, and we also see Hawks' original motivation once again brought up. So this chapter was super information heavy, and as I have more time to digest, I'll likely do a theory video about what all this means for the future going forward. So if you enjoyed this kind of content and enjoyed what I had to say, please don't forget to drop a like, comment, and subscribe. Have a beautiful day, and I will catch you all next time.